Next item, item number 5, public input. There was none received for that. Item number 6, we do have local board input. We have Kath Hanley from the Waiheke local board, along with Kylie Matthews, board member, wanting to talk to us today on the Waiheke local board concerns with respect to the Waiheke ferry service. There was one other application from Henderson Massey local board, and indeed the Hibiscus and Bays local board, but we've decided, given the heavy timetable today, we'll have them next time, so they will be presenting hopefully to us in the next time. So welcome, Kath. You have 5 minutes to address the committee regarding Waiheke ferry services.
Kia ora koutou. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just before I start, I want to tautoko the petition and say that from Waiheke's point of view, when the governing body made the decision to dispose of that building, we didn't know about it. It is our car park. So for overnight car parks and weekend long-term, that's Waiheke residents. And if you look at the ferries, when they run, you'll often see people who have toted stuff from all over the city, and they've got it to the car park and they have to get all their goods across. It is our shortest route to park a car and get stuff onto the ferry. So that was our car park, but nobody asked us whether it mattered or not if it disappeared. So tautoko that. That isn't why I'm here. I'm here to ask you for help on behalf of Waiheke Island and behalf of visitors to Waiheke Island, and on behalf of our board. Apologies that Member Matthews couldn't make it. We had a fair bit of fog out there this morning on the harbour. I just want to backtrack about what this is about. It is about PTOM, the public transport operating model, which is legislative in form and which covers all of the public transport in the country, including all of the ferries now that Devonport's in there, for all of Tamaki Makaurau, other than the Waiheke route. So you will have seen that we spend an enormous amount of energy, and from my point of view, across 3 ministers now, and over many years, and 2 mayors, and umpteen changes in personnel. The current functioning of our Waiheke to downtown return passenger service is dysfunctional at best, is unreliable. They're getting better, but we know that's temporary. I believe that the drawn-out nature of once the last minister said he would initiate the work to consider putting Waiheke ferries into PTOM. That was in Matariki weekend a year ago, and he did that. But it has taken until now and it's still not there with respect to a process. It says Waka Kotahi must make a recommendation to the minister to move Waiheke into PTOM, and for them there are legal thresholds they've got to meet. And even if they met them, the will has to be there to move us. So I just want to say right now, with the increase in the casual day rate for people going to Waiheke, it is now from here, they can do online, but let's say that isn't what most people do. They rock up to get a ferry. It's $58 return. Our winter trade has been dead. We don't see the numbers of particularly younger people that we have seen, and that comes on the back of years of COVID and then recovery. We are losing families, particularly in long-term residents, because we cannot afford the ferry and because families cannot visit their parents. So it can cost $150 or $200 for a family to come over and have lunch with their grandmother on Waiheke. I can give you some comparisons, which the minister in a letter he sent. So we are toing and froing between the minister. We met, and I noticed that Steve Mutton from Waka Kotahi is here. We met with Waka Kotahi a couple of weeks ago, and they have explained why it's taken so long. But in real time, the pain for people is extraordinary. If you didn't know you could get to work, right, and you had no options, you can't just run back, get a car, phone mum to pick you up, rush to the bus stop to get to the train station. It's not like that. We don't have an option. And we are used to having several hundred people left behind. So there's an issue of reliability, there's issues of regulation of that route, and there's definitely an issue of price. And I'll just bring up some comparison for you. And I know the minutes are ticking, Mr. Chair. So if, for those of you who represent Gulf Harbour and Half Moon Bay electorates, wards, your ferries, if you're on a Community Connect ferry, you're going to spend respectively, that's, Half Moon Bay and then Gulf Harbour, return connectivity $8.24, return and $11.60 respectively. 16 to 24-year-olds, $8.24 return and $11.60. Accessible fares $9.70 and $12.20 respectively. And if you're just going to be an adult, because we don't have any beneficiaries passes or anything, so we don't have any of those fares, you are going to spend a minimum of $33.20 getting into town. So we can't go shopping anywhere else. We don't have shoe shops for the kids, right? If you need to go to hospital or visit somebody in hospital, that is what you're going to pay. So at the moment, our monthly fares are being subsidised direct by Auckland Council, as they did for Devonport until it came into PTOM. What we need, now the Mayor's been well briefed, but historically there have been conduits through the governing body for people to represent our interests and to help with advocacy. We don't have that. We are working direct, just between me and the Minister, us and Waka Kotahi, us and Auckland Transport, us and Fuller's. And I've got to say that Fuller's themselves, I'll just quote this to finish, if I can find it, dealing with a disgruntled tour operator who's lost a great deal of money because he can't guarantee his passengers will get across. The chief executive of the business said, please either take up our offer of education in this area so you can make an informed comment, or please don't comment. If appropriate, feel free to thank my organisation, my crews, my teams, and my investors for the continued commitment to Waiheke over many years. Now, I don't know who would speak to their customers. I don't know who, and if we look at that, how much risk there is now in this enormously protracted discussion, and we may have a change, we will have a change of government, but we'll be dealing with different people again. What I'd like, Mr. Chair, is for this committee maybe to own some updates and also some way that there is some support in driving forward a resolution for the people of Waiheke, for whom our ferry has gone to the dogs. We are marooned, but it feels marooned. We shouldn't feel marooned when we are connected to the governing body. We can't expect to be connected to the CCO Board of Auckland Transport, and they're operational. You are political, and that is where this answer lies. So I do appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Hanley. Some very disturbing elements to what's happening at Waiheke, as indeed with other parts of the ferry service. I'll open up to questions now, and Councillor Fletcher.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Kath, I have so much sympathy with what you've put before us. I've just come back from Greece, and there is another city of sails, but with just such a comprehensive ferry service. I mean, you just can't imagine Greece without, and Athens without the ferry services that link it. My question relates not just to Waiheke. I know that you have followed the fortunes of the conservation projects and environmental projects over the last 25 years for the inner Gulf Islands. Would you like to comment on the difficulties that you're seeing from a conservation and environmental perspective on the failure to be able to provide services because I know a number of volunteers come from Waiheke, through Waiheke, but when you think of those inner islands, whether it's Motuihe, Motutapu, they also can no longer continue to run conservation programs because of the difficulties. So from a strategic sense, would you have further advice to this? You might say, well, environmental matters should be going to Councillor Hill's committee, but I think it's about the provision of infrastructure, and if we don't have the infrastructure, these things won't happen.
Thank you very much for the question, Councillor, and through you, Mr. Chair. The issues for volunteers and for groups are the same as the issues for businesses. The whole infrastructure and the setup for visitors and for one's lives and how they are lived revolves around transport as being a critical, essential function. So you build accordingly. When it starts to disappear, and when you can't bank on it, and when you can't get there, because we have a number of conservation groups, so we do a lot of our restoration work using volunteers with our largest organisations. You know, when you can't guarantee that they're going to get there on a Saturday morning to do their morning's work, to give them their free kai so they can then have a great time on Waiheke, that they become as affected as those commercial businesses and those families and those kids who have to pay $26 return to get to their sports activities compared to $0 from Half Moon Bay and $0 on all other ferries. So for us, we have no sports subsidies from Lion Foundation, which supports all sports, but we don't have their pokies, so we don't have all of that money going into our sports, and additionally the kids have to pay 26 return. Fuller's does support some teams, but that's not universal, of course.
Okay, given the nature of this presentation, we'll just have three more questioners, please, if we can just draw the line at that and make your questions reasonably direct. Please, Councillor Walker, Darby, and finish with Councillor Lee, the local ward councillor.
So are there any penalties that Fuller's faces over its management of the route?
The Quality Partnership Agreement that was signed that the Minister before last asked AT to negotiate with Fuller's. It took years to get that negotiated, and the Quality Partnership Agreement emerged from that, and that's when Devonport was moved into PTOM. In there are some penalties for services that don't run on time or don't run, and the money from those penalties comes to Waiheke Island. So far we haven't seen $1. It's run now for over the last year, and I gather the difficulty is in reconciling this with Fuller's, probably. But I can't tell you what that is because we haven't got the information.
No.
Because there's no data on, look, there is no transparent data on Waiheke ferries because it is considered commercially sensitive. We don't even have a fixed, a known visitor number. What we've got are extrapolated numbers over the decades. So, you know, unfortunately, when it comes to can I tell you hard facts, I've got quite a few, and we've got the extrapolated ones.
So just to clarify, there is public funding for the service? Some public funding?
No.
No, there isn't?
No, and there's no competition. So people talk about competition coming. I did get an email from Fuller's last night. They're going to add a booking system, which I think is called Waiheke Reserve, but I have no details about who will apply, who will be entitled to that. He does mention cruise ship passengers, so I guess they can pre-book 6 months in advance to get a particular ferry at the exclusion of everybody else.
Councillor Darby?
There is some public funding, though. There is Super Gold Card, and there's 18 monthly hop as of last 1
Sorry,
July.
I mentioned that earlier.
Yeah.
The discount for the monthly pass, because that is the group that, you know, where the monthly pass had got over $500, or I can't remember. Yes, and there is Super Gold Card. You're right.
Yeah, but look, that's probably just detail. But what you're saying, Kath, is, you know, look, we worked on this jointly and we got one across the line, which was Devonport, and now you're saying we haven't finished the job.
No.
And your board is is wanting us to pick it up again and fight for finishing the job.
Yes.
I mean, we've still got two others, but I don't think they're likely, which is Aotea and then the Kennedy Point.
Right.
They are also exempt services, but this is the main one you want to focus on.
The other passenger services, yes. So, I mean, and the one that you're referring to, I think there's also, there's the freight and vehicle service. So we already get a very good discount locally to go on the vehicle, thanks to Sealink, to go on that ferry.
Just on that QPA, the Quality Partnership Agreement that came in 1 July last year, required a minimum service standard from memory. I think it was called the Minimum Services Timetable. Are you saying that that minimum services timetable, which is a contract, there was a contract with the company between AT and Fuller's, has not been fulfilled?
The services have not been fulfilled. So, you know, in terms of cancellations or delays, they have had a shortage of maritime skills given.
Yeah.
We met them last August, I believe, and I hooked in Tautaki Auckland Unlimited CEO and their a person responsible for destination management into that meeting because I felt they had a lot to learn about what was going to happen, and I was told it was going to take a year to get everything back on schedule, but the QPA locked in not even our minimum winter timetable. So we lost a hugely important and vital 6:30 a.m. departure commuter service from Waiheke that could get people into town by 7:30 or, you know, to work. That just went during COVID and it was never brought back. So we call it the COVID winter timetable. That's the one that was locked in. We lost our half-hourly ferries. We used to have two companies running half-hourly. We've got one running hourly, except at key commuter times and the busiest time for visitors.
Okay, Councillor Lee?
Could I just one last one?
Yes,
so
and it's not a question.
That question, Kath, of Waka Kotahi, they undertook a report on this, and it was late last year. So have Waka Kotahi been talking to the board about that report? Now, I understand Waka Kotahi sought some corrections on that report as well. So what's the status of that relationship between you and Waka Kotahi? Because that's where the review is.
Yeah, that is where the review is, and that is where we have been, and we have invited them, and they did come and meet with us at the beginning of this month. So that report was to answer all the questions, and it was due at the end of last year. It didn't actually get powered back till early this year, and I'm not to be quoted because Waka Kotahi should be quoted on the timelines, but I think I'm pretty accurate. They then went to legal advice to say, does this meet the threshold? And then the legal advice said, no, there are one, two things still. So they then got another consultant, Sapir, who looked at competition, assessed the competition on the route, which, you know, must have been the briefest report ever written. That was due back with Waka Kotahi at the beginning of this month, according to the Minister. So they have explained for them the difficulties also with PTOM legislation. So yes, it was the National Party that put it in. It was actually Stephen Joyce who put it in against the advice of officers at the time. And when Nikki Kay was Minister, National Minister, she was our MP, and at a angry public meeting with hundreds of people with Fullers, she said National had made a mistake. So she said it very publicly. This should not be political at all. It's just an issue of equity.
Councillor Lee?
Thank you. Not a question, Mr Chair. My apologies for being late. I was held up. My ferry was late because of fog on the harbour. No one's fault, not Fuller's fault this time. I just want to support Kath Handley and the Waiheke Local Board. The Waiheke Local Board has been campaigning on this issue going back to the time of Nikki Kay. That's 4 ministers ago. There's a lot of sound and noise, but nothing much happens. But I can at least give some encouragement, some good news that there, I have it on good word that a local base ferry company will be entering the Waiheke service to compete on price and on reliability this summer. So that's good news. I just want to say I regret very much I couldn't be here to hear the presentation from Sherry Gartner, because in terms of Waiheke, the downtown car park building is very important for Waiheke Islanders and also their families, and also for conservationists going to work in the Gulf on the weekend. So I just want to make that point. Thanks very much, Kath.
Councillor Lee, would you like to move the recommendations?
Very happy to move the recommendations,
Seconded by
Mr Chair.
Councillor Fletcher, and I would just note in response to your request, Chair Hanley, that we're referring, there's a number of matters, and in fact there's a number of matters across the ferry network as a whole that Waiheke joins. I'm obsessed with Gulf Harbour, but we know there are other ferry runs that have been very adversely affected too. So that will get picked up, Kath, and it's very clear to me, and I guess the committee, that there are serious issues here that are not going away, and they need to be redressed, and in some cases after years and years. Moved and seconded. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Kath.
Thank you very much.
Okay, the next item. The next